And as of right now, we have to get to David Griscom. And I just realized, David, that apparently the gem graphic, economic is misspelled on it.
That's pretty funny. Well,
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like a Richard Wolff move to fuck with you and make us look bad,
that's pretty funny.
but economic is misspelled on the graphic. I think it's spelled
can't read it.
economic.
Oh, I
Economic
see.
minute.
I mean, it might just be hard to read.
No, it's spelled an economic minute. So are you trying to be ironic, David?
What are you talking about? I don't make these graphics. I don't know.
Hey,
what's
I don't
going
know
on.
what you do. I think you're very attentive to your public brand perception, David. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh man. Well, talking about.
So would you like to talk about water
Yeah, man.
privatization?
You're making me so uncomfortable because
I'm sorry.
I've lived in the North now for a little bit, and I feel like my Texas accent gets messed up, and I can't pronounce half the words I try to go about. So don't put that on me right now.
Economics, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm talking economics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone's noticed it's hot as hell outside. It's been hot as hell across the world. We're seeing record heat all across the globe, and it's starting to hit at a very important issue that we need to be talking about much more. Specifically, India, where extreme heat and drought have led that hundreds of villages have been evacuated in search of water. Delhi has had a massive drought. And southern India has had a significant drought as well. And, this is caused by extreme heat, mismanagement, and also a boom in industrial agriculture. But what you see on the other side of it, where water prices skyrocket, where the only people who have access to clean and potable water are the wealthy, is a vision of a very, very threatening trend, not just in India, but also all over the globe. At least 2/3 of the global population, that's around 4 billion people, live with severe water scarcity at least 1 month every year. And that's only going to get worse over the next decade as global warming starts to take more of an effect. Now, when we're talking about water scarcity, factory farming has a massive impact on it, but it's also climate change, obviously, and that is also comes out of a constant search for short-term profits at the loss of the majority of the population. But the fact is that water scarcity isn't a problem that we need to be facing if we were just bolder and more equitable in the way that we create our water systems across the globe. There are proposals out there, for example, by the Corporate Accountability Institute, which is a nonprofit watchdog, specifically around water organizations, that with just the current investment already in water infrastructure, by 2025, with just $90 billion more in investment, we could live in a situation where everybody has adequate water. But of course, under global capitalism, there are always those who want to make money out of a crisis. Now, over the past few decades, you've seen, especially in developing countries, a real fetish for water privatization and specifically partnering with private organizations, the famous public-private partnership. And we know that public-private partnerships are very skilled at extracting huge amounts of value out of very important social programs. Exceptionally skilled. But there's been a bit of a pushback because the price of water in areas where it's controlled by a private organization rather than public organization is significantly higher. But it's not just in developing countries that this is a problem. In the United States, a company, you might have heard of it, called Nestle, makes obscene amounts of money by tapping into our publicly controlled water system. Outside of San Bernardino, Nestle pays $524 a year. $524 a year to extract millions of liters of water from public aquifers. Just 2 hours from Flint, Nestle pays a paltry $250,000 a year to extract water from public aquifers in Michigan. This is going in areas right next to areas that are facing severe water shortages. And what Nestle is very successful at doing has been going to municipalities that are in need of quick cash or in needs of promise of investment or whatever. And they come in there and they start pulling out water from these natural aquifers and making massive profits. I mean, this is not chump change. Just last year, the bottled water industry in the United States was a $16 billion industry. And obviously, this gets much worse when we're talking about countries like Mexico. American companies like the Constellation Brewers, which makes Modelo, Corona, and Ballast Point, has basically created a drought-like situation in Mexicali because they're able to work with corrupt officials. In Canada, which is home of 1/5 of the world's fresh water supply, First Nations peoples face water shortages just outside of Toronto by one of the largest aquifers in the world. Nestle has a massive contract where they're able to extract millions of liters of water just up the road from places where people are having to catch rainwater, which is dangerous and it's filled with bacteria, and they're having massive health effects. This is happening down the road from Nestle's extraction plants. So when we're talking about privatization, there's two questions. One, do we have public control over the water in the first place? And two, can we trust our municipalities to not be so neoliberal that they're making contracts with these highly extractive and dangerous industries? In Chile, there are massive issues with access to water, where people oftentimes throughout the year do not have access to water through the public through their taps, because under Pinochet they privatized the industry. And what it means is that people in those areas of the world pay significantly more for their water than in other areas. So there's a twofold fight that we need to do. As socialists, we really need to be vigilant about this, because as water becomes more scarce over the next few years because of capitalism, because of climate change, there's going to be more of a crackdown to create more efficiency and market-based solutions for an absolutely essential part of life. And I'm here to tell you right now that that is not the answer. That is absolutely the worst thing that we can do, because if you give these people access and to control our water supply, they will be able to control us, quite literally. And the fact is that, especially in the United States, we're in a good situation where 3/4 of water provided across the country is still publicly owned. But that is under assault left and right. It's been mismanaged a lot by corrupt Republican governments, but also, mismanagement from Democrats as well. And we cannot allow a situation where private corporations are able to profit from taking something that is a public good, extracting it, and turning it into multi-trillion-dollar industry in the future. As a movement, we need to also really be advocating for massive global investment in water across the board, and to move away from the highly extractive industries that have been supported by the World Bank organization, to try to push these private industries to control water supplies abroad. This is an absolutely fundamental issue, and it's something that we need to be following through on as much as possible.
So you did well. I'm worried about the graphic. That was good. I just want to add two quick things to that, and then the great Emma Vigeland has arrived to defend Marianne Williamson from Matt's bullshit. And Matt's like, she's do science correctly. She's not supposed to do science correctly, Matt. She's supposed to be cool. Science is not cool. I actually want to start my own meme page called Science Isn't Cool.
That'd be pretty good.
Or I just do all of the cool alternatives to boring science.
Just because she's not doing science correctly doesn't mean she's cool.
It's a pretty long way in my book, but I have an anti-science brand. But I just two things to add to that. One, over a decade ago, when this that type of issue was lighting up in Bolivia, I remember reading about it. And not only were people trying to collect rainwater, they were actually making that illegal. They were trying to clamp down on the collection of rainwater as a way of getting around not being able to get water out of the tap to begin with. And then the other thing is this is another big problem, and I shouldn't have fucked around because now I have a serious point to make. But this is a big problem with the whole frame of you need to get people to accept the science of climate change. At one point, people on the right will, quote, accept the science of climate change, and the answer will be greater authoritarianism.
You're 100% right.
It's going to be complete resource hierarchy politics.
That's already what the climate, that's what the border policy is.
And that's already what's happening. In fact, if you read these policy memos, yes, in the Trump age, it's even more accelerated and ridiculous, and they will deny basic things, but there's other defense-aligned right-wing strategy planning that's the weather's changing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a rapidly deployable, military force to secure our material interests. And that will only be applied to the United States. I mean, look, how much we just had to struggle to get, Harvard to rescind an offer to Rick Schneider, for Christ's sake. So when they, quote unquote, accept science, the answer will be greater apartheid models.
No,
for
and
climate
that's the point. Is
scarcity.
apartheid too. No, actually, I just want to hit that because I wrote that in my notes and I overlooked it. This is a very good concrete example of when people say that climate change is going to affect communities of color and indigenous people and poor communities at a much higher rate than it will affect the rich. This is a perfect example of it. You're already seeing the people who are being excluded from access to water in India are the poor people. The people who are being excluded from access to water in Canada are indigenous people. The people who are being excluded from access to water in the United States are indigenous people, people of color, and working class communities. And this is how these inequities, counteract with the science, right?
That's right.
But the fact is that when you live in an unequal society, these things are going to have unequal effects on different communities.
You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.